But most of you, most people, are not mature enough to have the hard conversation. The conversation where you might be wrong, and might have to hear something that you don't like to hear, and actually discuss it like you want to do. The way you describe that is that, why can't we just have that discussion?
Yeah.
Because we can't. Because we're not mature enough. Okay, it takes a level of maturity to have that discussion without it just triggering, all the stuff, right? And then you can't have a conversation at all.
It ends up one-sided or
because
two-sided.
One person can have this tone of voice, the other one's screaming. And you're like, I can't have a conversation with you. You already lost your mind. You're already screaming. You're already so angry and upset and triggered because you're not mature enough to have the conversation. It's one of those really look, we have this in lots of areas of life. It can be something that you and I had happen. We're friends, we're coworkers, and something happened and we need to talk about it. It could be something like talking religion, like you might have to do with some of your family members, and they just can't have the conversation like a mature person and disagree with you. It could be politics. I can't have a conversation with my mother about politics. It's impossible. This is an educated woman who doesn't have the maturity to have that conversation. And I look at her like, I can't believe you and I can't have a disagreement conversation where I ask you, why do you like this, or why are you against that, and why I like this, or why I'm against that, whatever it is. We can't have that conversation. We should be able to have any conversation, but it takes a level of maturity, and we're not there.
I think it goes a long way when you're in the receiving position of somebody saying, you did this, you said that, and to be able to say, well, what do you think my intent was? What did you hear? What did you feel? Okay. And then I turn around and I validate that person. Again, if I'm not triggered, right? I can say to them, if I were in your place and perceived what you're saying you perceived, I would be upset too. So that validates, like, if even though your perception was not accurate, right? It wasn't based on fact. I can see why you're upset. And I think what has happened for me anyway is that for the most part, people tend to come down a little bit, and they'll say, yeah, exactly. So I'm validating, yeah, I would be upset too if I believed that.
Well, that's...
And then...
But hold on, that's tricky though, because...
Well, but then it's, however... That is not at all what I meant. That's not what I was thinking. It's not what I intended to communicate. And then the apology. I'm just saying that I feel like there's all this stuff in the middle.
Okay, but that doesn't work most of the time, because once you've validated them, which I think is good, because when I have a husband and wife in front of me, I make sure they always validate each other. Okay, like, did you hear what they said? It's not maybe that you agree with it or not, but just you heard it, you understand that's how they felt or whatever, right? That's validating. Validating doesn't mean you agreed and they were right. It means that you actually validated that that is how they felt. Okay, now, as soon as you validate, and they go, yeah, you see, now they're even more not necessarily going to be ready to receive your reason why that wasn't true. Now they're thinking you agreed with them for a second, and now it can often be more entrenched and hard to do. I'm not saying don't do what you did, just realize more often than not, they're not going to receive your explanation that, even though you just validated them, that wasn't what your intention was. Because they're already convinced that was your intention.
Right. Sometimes I just let them talk. I let them talk and I let them get it out of their system, and I don't react, and I don't, and I just say, okay, well, I can tell that you're really upset, and I'm sorry that you're so upset over this misunderstanding, and that kind of thing. But anyway, I knew that's not what you had said. It's just what I heard. Right. I'm like, wait a minute, it sounds.
No, and it wasn't what I said. But the thing is, your process is excellent, and what I would teach anybody to do if people were mature enough to do it. Yeah. I mean, you should try it anyway. Look. The person comes at you, you say, hey, if I was in your shoes, I would feel the same way, but I'd love for you to give me a chance to explain that wasn't my intention, and that wasn't what and they may or may not let you do that depending on how triggered they are at the moment. You may have to sit there and just listen.
If they don't allow that?
Yeah, you tell them,
do you politely walk away and,
I just tell them to grow up. No, I'm kidding. That will not work. No.
I've tried it. Definitely doesn't work.
I've tried it too. It just doesn't work. All right. But it's you understanding at that point, there's no place to go until they calm down. There's no place to go because we're dealing with what is always called a triggered reaction. Once it's triggered, until the trigger plays out, they can't receive something new. They're in this reactive trigger. If I said to you, why did you do that? Now, clearly there was a look on my face like I wasn't happy about it. Why did you do that? Now, my tone of voice is this loud. Why did you do that? And you look at me and say, why are you so angry? I'm like, I just said, why did you do that? With a little bit of a tone in my voice, I guess, but I certainly wasn't angry. But then there's no convincing you, though, that I wasn't.
Or that you weren't
And Elder
criticizing
can tell
or
you, I get
disapproving.
accused all the time of being angry. And he sat with me going, I don't know, you never raised your voice. You didn't. But you can't convince the other person of the reality they've now convinced themselves of. Okay, through their filters, you were screaming. I had a lady put on Facebook that I yelled at her on a phone call when I had people sitting with me at that time on that phone call knowing I never raised my voice once, but wrote that I yelled at her. Never raised my voice. This is her perception to justify her position in a triggered state. I'll never win the argument that I didn't yell.
And hopefully there's an opportunity sometime later
Right.
to revisit that conversation when people aren't as upset.
That's where you have to wait till it calms down, and then you have to see if it's possible. But, I love when people are screaming at me that I'm angry.
Yeah.
And I'm not the one screaming. But just understand, everybody, when we're talking about this stuff, and this is so critical, please aspire to be able to have challenging conversations no matter how hard it is. That is the only way to truly mature, is to get to that place where you can have the challenging conversation, where you might have to admit you were wrong. You might have to admit you were weak. You might have to admit you were a baby. You may have to admit all kinds of things. But instead of admitting it, we double down and attack twice as hard because of the pride, the ego that's going on in there. We are just so protective of that rather than say, wait a minute, you know what? I am acting like a big baby. I am taking things way too personally. They're really not this. I really am getting involved in stuff that's none of my business. I have no idea why I'm so in everything that's not my business.